Hi, I'm Leticia Barosa. My presentation focuses on the Infant Toddler Learning and Development Foundations, specifically pages 43 to 54, as well as Chapter 4 of the Infant Toddler Curriculum Framework. Both sections cover the topic of language development. So, information on language development is that language acquisition in young children is rapid and effortless. Development is fundamentally the same across cultures and languages, as well as milestones are reached the same globally. An example is at 6 months, infants start babbling. At the age of 3, they can form full sentences. Language development develops within the context of relationships, as well as how language development is linked to emotional interactions with caregivers. It gives examples in the text of how infants even have a preference of having their mother speak in the language that the mother spoke during pregnancy, and even how adults and caregivers, we mostly modify the way that we speak to infants. So at my site, as soon as I walk through that door, my vocal pitch goes higher, and I use a lot of facial expressions. I make sure to use repetition and to elongate my vowels. An example is how we're trying to get an infant at my site. We switched him to milk after his mom told us that he started to like milk at home instead of water. So we're trying to get him to say leche, which means milk in Spanish, during eating time. So when he reaches for his cup of milk, we say, ¿Quieres leche? And he usually responds with like agua. So we say, this is leche, leche. And we keep repeating leche whenever he says agua and he points at the milk, just so that he can get that sense of repetition. Not only does this help his language development, but it also connects with the child's cultural and linguistic experiences at home because we're using his home language, Spanish, to communicate with him. The next bullet point is preverbal communication, which includes eye contact, gestures, and sounds. Preverbal communication is when babies find different ways to communicate before they can speak through eye contact, gestures, and sounds. The four domains of language development is receptive language, expressive language, communication skills and knowledge, and interest in print. The definition of receptive language is the developing ability to understand words and increasingly complex utterances. Infants can detect patterns in spoken language. The textbook gives examples of how infants have language awareness and can understand more vocabulary than they can say. Repeated speech experiences aid in language acquisition. An example of receptive language at my site is when playing with toy balls in a basket. I'll sit down on the floor so that I'm at eye level with him and ask him, "Can you roll the ball to me?" And he usually always rolls the ball back, exactly in my direction. The definition of expressive language is the developing ability to produce the sounds of language and use vocal and increasingly complex utterances. Expressive language skills include how infants start communicating through sounds, gestures, and speech. For preverbal infants, they use vocalization and babbling as their expressive language. Infants use imitations such as sound and rhythm of adult speech as part of their development. As infants develop between the ages of 1 to 2, they obtain their first 50 words. When a child reaches 24 months, their vocabulary growth can increase to 3,000 to 400 words per year until high school. At my site, there's only one child, so we always try to communicate with him, especially if he's trying to communicate with us through babbling and gestures to make sure that he knows that we're listening to him and to motivate him to communicate more. The book even states for teachers to be more responsive when a child initiates communication and even engages in nonverbal communication. The definition of communication skills and knowledge is the developing ability to communicate nonverbally and verbally. Infants communicate through speech, gestures, facial expressions, and by directing their attention to communicate with others. As infants express themselves, they expand their vocabulary. Communication with peers and adults is crucial for their development. The book gives examples of how infants interacting with peers can help them in conversational skills because they'll be exposed to situations like understanding when to erupt and how to interrupt, making topic-related contributions, and how childcare settings can become high-quality childcare settings, using this opportunity for communication with both adults and peers, which can help childcare settings. An example is the infant at my site shows his communication skills and knowledge when we're in the dramatic play area of the room. He hands me a toy phone and he grabs another toy phone and he holds it against his ear and says hello. and pauses waiting for me to make a response back. This is the fourth and last domain of language development. The definition of interest in print is the developing interest in engaging with print in books and in the environment. Infants show interest in print through physical exploration by putting books in their mouths, handling books, focusing on printed material in the environment. They can be flipping a book. As they get older, they can be pretending to read the book. Shared book reading is an effective way to promote emergent literacy, and in the age range chart below, it even says how around 36 months, infants start learning to show appreciation for books and even start asking questions and finding books on their own. And the chapter emphasized how early print is important for the infant's literacy skills later on. An example from my site is we have a library in the classroom, and when it's time for outdoor play, we put a box filled with books available, and we even change the books that are inside the classroom, but keep the books that are outside the classroom the same, which provides him a balance of repetition and familiarity, but it also still exposes him to different types of books. So this is an activity, these questions that can help you reflect on your students' teaching site's library or your future classroom library. Question 1 is, what types of books will you have in your classroom? Choose at least 3 and explain why you think they will help infants and toddlers with their language development. If possible, you can include images of the books. And the second question is, select one book from the 3 that you chose and consider some strategies that you can use when reading it to infants and toddlers. And how will you support dual language learners with the book?